Hello, my name is Gary Koop, and I'm an instructor of technology and media arts at a local college. What follows is an edited version of a 2-day class I teach on the basics of Photoshop. This course is intended for first-time beginners, and for this reason I make use of several teaching aids and a lot of humor to keep students interested and entertained. I hope you enjoy this thumbnail version of my 2-day class. Thanks.
Okay, welcome again. Thank you for coming back. This is day 2 of Introduction to Photoshop. My name is still Gary Koop. Just by way of review, last week we did quite a lot. We started with that photograph of the wedding that, as promised, by the end of the day, everybody's sick of that one photograph. But we spent a lot of time working on taking care of the exposure, the color of the lady's eyes, taking some blemishes out of her forehead, adding color to the flowers. We put some light on the faces. We got rid of some of the annoying people in the background, like this guy over here and these people over here. And then towards the end, we rotated the picture. That opened up some areas in the corners that we had to fix, and we used the clone tool to do that. And then we cropped it to the right size such that when it was ready to be printed, you just send it to the printer and it would come out the right size. So it was a lot to do for just one single picture. And I hesitate to put up this next view graph. You know, any comments? If not, I'm going to move on to today's activities. But I did want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions if you have any. I'm not seeing anything, so okay. I don't believe you, by the way. So this week, we're going to cover an additional set of topics. The first one is the so-called Camera Raw. And we got into this a little bit towards the end of the last class. And there are some nice features in Camera Raw that I thought would be worthwhile discussing. And so we will cover that for a little bit. We're going to do a little bit with what are called filters. Filters are really fun. You can do some real artsy-fartsy type things with filters and create interesting perspectives of photographs. A lot of variability, so you should have some fun with that. The next topic, layers and adjustment layers, are going to be the heart of what it is we're going to talk about today. This is really what makes Photoshop a very useful tool. Being able to put things on different layers, it gives you a lot of flexibility. More than anything, it gives you the flexibility to make corrections when you goof up someplace. And I noticed last week there were a couple of instances where people were trying to do something, particularly with the clone tool. You'd clone into the wrong area, and then you're stuck with it. You know, what do I do? Well, I don't know what you do. This week, I got a good answer because things will be on different layers, and so if you make an error, the error is on another layer, and you can fix that one layer without adjusting or impacting the basic image. So that will be very useful. So let's get started. I'm very proud of this photograph, and I think you can see why. It's a photograph. It's well composed. The exposure is set properly. There's a lot of detail in the image. The colors are really brilliant. It's just a wonderful photograph, right? No, this photograph is horrible, and I could say that because I was the one that took the photo, and I have no idea what I was thinking when I took this photo, but it just came out horrible. But we can fix it, and we're going to use the Camera Raw, Adobe Camera Raw, as sort of a pre-processor. Before you actually get into Photoshop, Camera Raw opens up the photo and allows you to do a bunch of things on it before you actually transfer it over to Adobe or to Photoshop. So one of the first things we want to do is fix the exposure. And if you notice, there's a little button up here, exposure, and if you just click on that and drag it to the right, things start looking better. I'm doing like 3.7. So you can see that using Camera Raw, I was able to capture the essence of the image, even though the image was horribly overexposed or underexposed. There was enough information still in there that Camera Raw was able to dig it out. So here's an example now of what the image should have looked like. And there are a number of other sliders, and I would just kind of have at it and play around with it. One of the sliders that I use quite frequently is this thing called the shadows slider. And you can increase the exposure of just the shadow areas by dragging shadows to the right. So you can see you're starting to build up some information in these areas that were formerly in shadows. Anyway, it's kind of a nice tool. There are some nice features to using Adobe Camera Raw, and that was just a little introduction. Okay, the next topic is filters. So I'm just using this as an example of a photograph that you can play around with. Here's one of my favorites, glowing edges. So go down here to style, yeah, right there, stylize. Oh, you had to start over again. Okay, yeah. So go to stylize, click on that, and then glowing edges. Oh. So these are just different ways of introducing different types of effects. And you just play around with a bunch of them. It just depends upon what you're into that day. And now we're going to load everybody's favorite, umpire. Okay. I don't know this person. I just got it off the internet. But it provides a good opportunity to use another filter, which is called the liquefy filter. So let me just do this once to show you what we're going to do. But the way this thing works is by clicking and dragging, usually around the perimeter, but I'll put the plus sign kind of around this area, and I'll just gently push in. You have to be careful when you do this. It's very easy to overdo. So you take it in small steps.
Can you put it back if you put it too far?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can bring it back out.
Yeah, I mean, you could do stuff like that doesn't look all that realistic. I'm going to Control Z out of that, which is why you have to take it slowly. You just do little increments here and there. Anyway, you can continue on, but that's a fun filter. Okay. And now we're going to jump into the topic of layers. So layers. The concept of layers is very simple. For those of you who are old enough to remember, years ago this was a view graph. Okay, you had these things, and you'd print stuff on them, and you'd put it on a machine. Light would come up, and it would reflect on the wall. And that's how view graphs worked. That was way before PowerPoint. Photoshop, the same concept is being applied, but to much better advantage. So here's an example of a layer. One layer. Last week when we were working on an image, that's all we had. We had one layer. And we did everything, all that wedding photograph stuff was all done on one layer. If you screwed up that layer, you screwed up that layer. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, if this is one layer, I can now add another layer, layer 2. So now there are 2 layers there. Here's layer 2, and underneath is layer 1. Layer 1. Now notice that these 2 layers are totally independent. Bye-bye. They're totally independent. I can move one relative to the other. I could change the color of one relative to the other. This is red. I could make it green, and it wouldn't affect the layer that's on top of it. I can move the layers around. I can put layer 1 on top of layer 2, like that. The Layers panel is probably the most important panel in Photoshop. It's the one you want to have open all the time. And I do that. Whenever I'm working, I always keep the Layers panel open, because it just helps me as a guide to know which layer I'm working on and what the status of each individual layer is. So let me talk about the Layers panel, which is right in here. So this gives me the layer structure for this image. It has 4 layers. You may not see 4 layers here, but there are 4 layers there. One is the red layer. You could probably guess which one that is. And the green layer. So here's red layer over here, green layer. There are 2 other layers back here. There's a white layer and a black layer. But they're underneath the red layer and the green layer. The red layer's on top, then the green layer, then the white layer, and then the black layer. Now, there are 2 attributes, 2 key attributes for a layer. One is this little eyeball sign right here. The eyeball sign says the layer is visible. When you're looking at the image, you're able to see that layer. So for example, in all of these cases, the eyeballs are on, and I can see all the layers. Now the reason I don't see the black layer is because the white layer is on top of it. But if I were to turn off the white layer, I'm going to click on that little eyeball right here. Just turn it off. Click on it. And that's what happens. So now I'm still seeing the red layer, the green layer. The white layer is turned off, but the black layer is not turned off. And so I'm seeing red, green, and black. So that's the importance of these eyeballs over here. It tells you what layers are visible. You notice on the way it's set up right now, this green layer has a box that's kind of colored in, or darker. What that means is that's the active layer. If I do anything to a layer, that's the only layer that's going to be impacted. Everything else will be the same. So it's analogous to what I was showing before, where I'm holding a whole bunch of layers, but if I just move one of the layers around, all the other ones don't move at all. In this case, in Photoshop, the way you make that happen is by making, in this case, the green layer the active layer. And let me show you what will happen now. I'm going to go up. I'm going to grab what's called the Move tool as I click on the green, and now I can move the green around relative to the red.